everybody, and welcome to what is our fifth session on Office Hours with Professor Pat. Let's go ahead and get it going. I'm Pat. I'm one of the co-founders of Zia Consulting. Just celebrated our 17th anniversary yesterday, which is pretty awesome. Unfortunately, we weren't with everybody because of everything that's going on, but we will be back together again to celebrate. In any case, what are we doing here? We're trying to figure out how we create a community of people that are interested in capture. Specifically, my expertise is in Ephesoft, but we do encourage other people to bring other technologies. We can even set up Pepsi challenges, whatever's useful to people, whether it just be knowledge sharing, questions answered, or even like a Pepsi challenge in case we wanted to go apples to oranges, if you will. So one of the updates that I got today, and permission to kind of talk about it, especially since I've gotten like 3 of our customers asking what the heck is this thing. You may have seen Semantik for invoices and the marketing that they're doing around Semantik for invoices. So let's take a quick look. So what it is the capability of being able to have a SaaS type of application. And you know what? You guys are not looking at my screen, or are you looking at my screen right now? Can you see it? Anybody?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. So what I'm going to show you is Semantik. It's a SaaS application right now that's dealing with invoices. The idea behind Semantik is that they want to create capabilities of SaaS type of applications that are cloud-based that give you the capability for both vertical and back office functionalities. Right now, they're starting with invoices. So let's go ahead and take a look what it is. And so right now, you can set up, when you get set up inside of Semantik for invoices, you then get an email address. And then invoices are sent as attachments to this application, and then they're processed. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I've just sent in. You can see that I have 1 completed and 2 that are new. I can go ahead and claim those. So this is also an operator experience for being able to do exception handling. And once I claim those, then I'm going to see what it did. So you can see this is a very simple invoice that we're looking at right now. But then I can start looking at where it retrieved that information. So it has a really cool UI in the sense of being able to establish where it got that information. You can see that it does some formatting of dates, even though that this was 4608, that it did this normalization of dates to day, month, year. Also, so this one picked up the wrong terms. It was page 1 of 1, but the total, the subtotal, the tax rate, the tax amount, see that there's 14 different things that are getting extracted from here. You can see that which ones are confident, and so you can see that these are all in the 90s. You can see that this page actually is not that confident and in the 60s. Right now, this is pretty early days, as you would expect. There's no table extraction. That is expected to come soon. I'll go over a little bit more of what it is and what it's not in a second. And then you're able to download those. And I can go to review and go to the next one. And you can see that, this one's a totally different version, and, some of the invoice number and some of the invoice dates were picked up on side of here, but maybe not like the invoice amount. This had a very strange, this was a very tough one to run. That's why I actually ran it, to see that there was things crossed out, and there was totals, and there were stickers on it. And so it still did a relatively decent job for being able to extract this information. But I know that a lot of you had questions about it, so I kind of wanted to go over what it looked like and what it is and what it is not. So there's 14 predefined fields with AI training for extraction, a designated email address for sending your emails to. You can download right now, but webhooks are available soon. I was told that I was going to get some documentation and they were going to be available as early as tomorrow. we might have an update for you next week on what exactly this is. I've also received information today that there's some Ephesoft Transact integration. Still trying to figure out what that is and means. The near-term roadmap, as you saw on there, they already had a place marking for tabular extraction. Right now it doesn't separate invoices. So if you created a couple PDFs in one, that's fine. But if you had one PDF that had 15 different invoices as a part of that, it's not doing separation right now. And there's no real customizations right now. So this is invoice only. So if you're looking for a total accounts payable, that's dealing with shipment notifications and order acknowledgments and other document types that are available within the AP world, they're not there right now. And I'm still trying to figure out, that fourth bullet of how does it interact with Transact. My idea behind right now is that if there is the integration, depending on how it is that, and this will suit people that actually have an accounts payable application right now, as well as people that are coming out brand new, is that when we're not confident or don't find certain information, we can actually then query Semantik for invoices and then be able to retrieve information back and pull it back. So it's just another kind of exception handling capability. Of course, we can do it the opposite direction for somebody that is creating a brand new application where they might use that as the primary extraction tool for invoices, but they might want other capabilities around PO verification and validation, or being able to adopt other document types that might be part of that accounts payable. I have a question coming in. Let me take a look. So will it learn from corrections? I haven't tested it enough to see that it does. It should. It's supposed to, and that's why it's kind of a SaaS application and not on-prem. Although there is talk about some of this logic and algorithms going down to the Transact application. I think they're still trying to figure out what that means, in the sense of they don't want to slow it down so much that they have very excruciating algorithms on the on an on-prem solution. So if you have a 4-core, it just dies. But in any case, it should learn how to be able to do it. But I don't know any facts around, like, is it the 10th time? Is it the first time? Will it, be how quickly will it be available? Are you actually learning also from other people's learning mechanisms? I'm still trying to. This is still early days, so I'm still trying to figure that all out. And hopefully, I'm able to give you some updates in real time as we have more of these sessions. And so maybe we'll have a new segment of where is Semantik. So it just for those that are looking at it, it's a SaaS application, so it's going to be kind of like a per page type of processing charge. There are going to be discounts for volume based, so it's anywhere ranging from, I think it was like 7 cents a page to like 50 cents a page for very low, 7 cents a page for very high volume type of applications. But if you have specific questions around this and how it plays with Transact and how it doesn't, and what direction should you go in, whether it be a new or an old application that you're dealing with, let me know. And if I don't know yet, I will find out. One of the I did put the URL on here. However, keep on the lookout for like on LinkedIn and everything else. There is going to be a webinar on this on the 20th, and so I'm sure that more of the questions that you may have may be answered inside of that session. All right. Any other questions on Semantik, at least what we know right now? So there's no download to Semantik, if that's what you're asking. Right now, you get your own link when you sign up for the service, and then you're able to process whatever given volume-based purchase that you've created or that you procured. Okay. If you need or want to look at a couple invoices and what it looks like of your invoices, let me know. I do have access to it. So we can go over it together and take a look at what that does with whatever you're curious about. So maybe perhaps some invoices that don't work well within your implementation today, or ones that are going really well, and see if they actually still work really well. So anyway, okay, we will move on, and I think that there's enough interest where we'll try to give you some updates if there's updates to be had for Semantik for invoices. All right, we had a question that was sent to me about dictionaries, and so there's a notion of dictionaries inside of the OCR level, and so what you can provide it is kind of a list of words, and those words will now then be preferenced when they start looking at character by character. If it has like one character off, then it'll say, oh no, it's actually this word. So it's really good if you have specific dictionaries, like if you have medical dictionaries or legal dictionaries that may not necessarily be, everyday words, then it might be useful to be able to leverage that. So I'm not really going to do that because I was going to show you what that looked like and something that it fixed, and I couldn't really find something that was specific enough to show you that would fix something, but I'll just show you where you actually fix it. So within your application, you have an OCR Recostar project, assuming that you're on the Windows platform. If you're on the Windows platform, you're using Recostar. So typically, you're using either this fpr.rsp or the fpr with barcode. That's selectable within the designated OCR plugin. So when you're looking at that set, you can see that it's going to OCR an entire page. One of the parameters or properties that you can set is selecting a dictionary. And so that dictionary is just a file that has character turn delimited list of words or phrases on however you're going to process those. And then you can specify whether that dictionary is complete or incomplete. Are those the only words should it be looking for, or should it look for both? Just give preference to the dictionary, and then looking for the dictionary of either words or entire lines inside of there. So if you have something that may not be OCRing often, there's a couple other reasons for that. Like if you one of the properties in here while we're here is called logical context, and so logical context is going to give a preference that if it's a word, then it starts off with like characters, then it's going to assume that it's characters inside of it. If that is off, then it's going to say that that there could be a mixed bag of characters and numbers and things of that notion. So if you have something like a part number, that might incorporate both alpha and numeric characters, and so you might want to turn that off. And that's not necessarily the dictionary thing, but while I was in here just talking about OCR, I thought I would chat about that. So dictionaries are something that I got a question in here. Does Recostar or Ephesoft sell dictionaries separately? So I have not seen those available. It's something that you can just literally create one, and I started creating one and decided I wasn't going to show that during this particular session, but so I just started creating one. So it's as simple as creating these list of words and then incorporating that within there. So if you have this list of words, and most of these are common words that I was doing in here, like I said, most of the time it's used for like legal or medical kind of dictionaries. But it's as simple as creating that list of words. I haven't seen somebody that just sells a list of words or a complete dictionary. It does optimize this, so when it does compile for the first time and it's using a dictionary, you'll see a binary file get created, and so it's pretty fast. So you can create a fairly extensible dictionary, and it still be performant. Not necessarily. So I think that that's a good question. There was a question that come in, format is uppercase. I did this because I was looking at a case that everything was uppercase. I think that it does not matter, that it's going to be case insensitive. But remind me, shoot me an email, just so I remember, and I'll ask that question. I'm not positive. All right. So today's lesson, I started looking over, I started a segment last week around lesser known features inside of Ephesoft, and came up with that there's two actually export capabilities that are inside of Ephesoft that don't really get utilized. And so I want to describe those, but I realized also that I have not went over what are the options with export. What are the things that you can do with inside of Ephesoft as just a completion. So let's just kind of walk through those and talk about those different options. So the first one is copy batch XML. And so copy batch XML, it literally does that. And so you can specify where the documents go. You can specify where the batch XML goes. The batch XML, for those that do not use it or have not used it yet, is where it keeps all the information that's going along with the batch. So it builds up as it goes along the workflow. And so it has things like, what are the documents? What are the pages in the documents? What's the metadata that's associated with that document? When it comes to end of day, you're going to have all that information. And so we have the documents, and then the first step that is run inside of the export, typically run first step inside of the export, is the creation of these binary files and of the documents themselves. And so you might have one PDF that comes out, like we're talking mortgage, and that might produce 75 different documents. And so those documents are then created as separate PDF or TIFF files, depending on how you configure it. So those get processed, and then how it gets named, this will say where it gets pushed to. Are you going to pick the PDF or the TIFF file? How are they named? Where they get placed? Often used for CYA. For those that don't know that term, it's cover your, yeah. And so a lot of times we'll use that in the capability of saying, okay, well, what happens if something goes wrong? So in the export process, if we lose information, well, we don't want to lose that. And so even if you're using one of the other mechanisms that we're going to go over in just a moment, that you might want to still use the copy batch XML and then just kind of delete it after a couple months. It's kind of like the same reason that people that are still dealing with paper would keep it around for a little while and say, okay, we processed that, but we're going to verify not only that it made it to the backend repository, we're going to make sure that that repository was backed up as well before we start losing information. So even if you're not going to use this for the true export, you might want to use it just to cover your bases. And so that's what it's used for. Pretty simple and straightforward. There is CMIS export, Content Management Interoperability Services. So if you're not familiar with that term, think SQL for ECM, WCM portal, and some other applications. I think that like SAP, some of the components support that. Some of the PeopleSoft, if I remember correctly. Some of the ECMs like Alfresco and FileNet P8, Documentum, Nuxio. WCS is some of the just kind of online web publishing tools supported, as well as portal technologies like LifeRay. And so it covers a lot of bases. And what it entails is essentially mapping of metadata and where it's going to push it to. And so there's a receiving end that's going to be that ECM, WCM, that portal, and then or some of the applications, and then there's a protocol between the two of them that was created to try to make this more uniform. A couple things that I want to show you is what that looks like. So if we look at it, there is this application, this mapping. And so if you look at the left, that is your document for Ephesoft. If you look at the right, that is your endpoint. So in this case, the nomenclature of D:, and then the namespace, and then the document type. This is the namespace, is that document type. And then after that is each field and how it gets mapped inside of the backend. So it's just, what is this content model? What is that content model? How does it map? One other thing that's supported is inside of Alfresco, there's this notion of aspects. Think about it like a cross-sectional data mapping bag of things. And so it might be that you create these properties that go with multiple document types. You don't want to repeat that, and you don't want to manage that at a per document type level. So you want to create that saying like, this is for records management. And so records management might be a slew of different things, or it could be just usage and rights type of information that might go over photographs and movies and everything else. So that's a cross-sectional capability of kind of the same thing where we're just going on but it does support that for Alfresco as well inside of Ephesoft. I'm just going to pause for a second before I go on, see if there's any questions. Not as of yet. So let's move on. Just what I said a minute ago, different support. There's also support because Box does not support CMIS. And so Box is, if you know what Box is, so it's a file sync and share tool, but it's also going into cloud content management. So more of the ECM, traditional ECM capabilities inside of the cloud. And so there is the capability of being able to push things inside of there. One thing that it does not support right now is the capability of supporting Box templates. We actually created some functionality at Zia around support of templates within Box and utilizing those. So if that's something that you're interested in, and of course you're one of our customers, please feel free to reach out if you're not using that already, because that's something that we can help you with. All right, keep on going on. What is DB Export do? So DB Export is the capability of being able to push information inside of a database. Very straightforward. The cool thing about this, and which is not supported by the previous things that I was mentioning, is that it does support both data level fields as well as tabular information. And so looking at what that mapping looks like, you can see here that there's a capability of doing data level fields. DLF is that data level field or document level field, and also tables. And so this is the same kind of mapping that we were looking before on CMIS, but now we're going to say, okay, what table, what column does that information go on? And so this is where at a per batch class level, you're able to specify that unique mapping. All right, let's move on. So there's also the capability of having export script and custom plugins. So what are these things? So a script, if you're not using scripting already, is just picture whatever you can picture. It's kind of a misnomer to some extent. People, when they talk about script, they think about some proprietary language or something very specific. And this one gives you the capability of having all the power of Java. And so when you create both in a script or a custom plugin, and I'll describe what those differences are in just a moment, is that you're going to be handed information around the document object model. And so document object model, if I refer back to the batch XML, that's just an in-memory batch XML. And so it's just that hierarchy of what you want to do with it. For those that are our customers, we have the capability of making that more object-oriented, so you can get documents, get fields, set fields, things of that nature. And so you can do whatever you want. So if you wanted to create a specific proprietary API calls to an SDK or some RESTful or SOAP-based functionality, then you can do so here. The only difference between like that script and the plugin is that the plugin will give you the capability of wrapping properties. So you're used to looking at those plugins and saying, okay, well, this is the URL that it's going to hit, and this is the username that it's going to hit with, and this is the password. You can do very much that same thing. And so on a per instance level, you can deploy that plugin, and then you can control that difference instead of within a properties file, where you would typically keep it within a script. You would then be able to specify those values inside of the properties in that plugin. So I'm going to pause for another second. No, there's no, right now it's written in Java. So you could use some sort of wrapper. Sorry, I got a question coming in saying only Java, no Python or Jthon. So right now, what's passed into it, what's called to it, is this wrapper of Java. And so you're basically, an execute method is called. That execute method then passes you what that XML or that DOM is, and then you can do whatever you want. You could create very much the same thing where, a lot of times inside of the Ephesoft world, it's calling things to the system. And so we have one customer that had a lot of logic within Python, and it was a medical type of application, and it was very complex logic on how they actually had to do separation and classification of these documents, to the point where it said, okay, well, I have a database full of doctors and patients, and if you find a doctor's name, then that's a document. If you find two doctors' name, or they belong to, or they went to two different clinics, then that should be a duplicate document and specified as this kind of document. And they had all this logic wrapped around Python. And so what they ended up doing was creating a RESTful wrapper around that logic, and then we just called it from Java. And so inside of the assembly script in this case, we're just say, go get that information. Here's the XML that we have at this point, and so give us information back. Actually, we patched them the HOCR files. So you still can leverage, if you have something in Python or JSON that you want to utilize or leverage within the Ephesoft world, there's ways you can do it, and let us know and we can talk to you through that and best practices around it. All right, there's also one inside of there that's for CSV. Don't use it. Essentially, it's pretty legacy, pretty old. There's other ways to do it. There is a script available from Ephesoft that we can hand you that kind of gives you the scripting elements of how that it can get accomplished, and then you can just kind of customize it for yourself. Or we can use the custom export, which is something that we're going to go over in just a moment. So let's go there. Let's go ahead and start one too, because I kind of want to show you some of these things. This was the whole reason that I was going to start off. I started off with the content of lesser known features and realized there's two lesser known exports. I'm going to go ahead and start a couple of batches. And hold on. Oh, barely caught it in time for my session. Let me go ahead and start one. That way we can see what that looks like as we go through it. So, custom export plugin. It gives you the capability of being able to transform that XML that we're talking about, that batch XML, to whatever the heck you want it to be. And so there's the capability of being able to specify, and you see that in the right-hand side, this schema. And so that schema is just a text file that you can upload. As you can see here, I uploaded this JSON simple schema. And then I started naming these variables. And so in this case, I wanted to create a JSON file. And inside of that JSON file, I'm going to say, okay, map this name to the batch instance. And there's documentation on this and what's supported and what's not. So batch instance name. And then I have the identifier, the batch instance identifier. And then I started doing some the document level fields. I want the type to be the document type. And then the date, that's something that's a DLF, or a document level field. I want that to be, to get the value from that document level field and push it inside of this JSON file. And so you can do this with each different document type. And so for each one of these, you can specify the document type. So you can create one of these for each document type, and you can create how you actually want to transform that, and use and then be able to specify where you want to export that and where you want to export the actual image file. As you can see here, I'm using some of those same parameters for where I want to push it to. And so I'm going to push it somewhere local of Ephesoft custom export, and then I want to specify the batch instance identifier. Same thing goes with the binary file or the document. Check real quick. All right. And another lesser known export is web service plugin. And what that does is gives you the capability of being able to export the PDF or TIFF to an external SOAP or REST endpoint. So you can create, I'll go over that in a second, but you can also create a custom jar and integrate to whatever you want to, essentially take over that functionality that it's doing and write your own if necessary. So it gives you a framework around that and passes you whatever you need to be able to write your own. It's kind of like a custom plugin that I was talking about, but this is very specific to this kind of like SOAP operator. So you're able to all get the information from this particular plugin setting, and this is and then be able to pass it into your own code. And so we're going to take a look at that too. And it supports basic OAuth 2. And I think that it supports one other one, which we'll look at in a second. Hold on a second. Let me take a look because I think I missed one. And basic, okay, basic and authentication and OAuth. So I did list them all. So let's take a look at what that did, assuming that it already ran through. So one of the things that it does is hits an endpoint. And so in this case, you can see this one that just happened right now at 12:28, which was just a couple minutes ago. And it posted that information. So this was just the out of the box. I didn't create anything custom here. It just hit the point and posted all the information that's inside of here. So that's something, I just use this tool that's online to be able to retrieve some sort of request. But of course, if you had an endpoint that already accepted a RESTful call and understood that post format, or you created one that was custom for on that end, on the application end, then you could just use this out of the box. And if not, then you can use this custom service. So essentially, you would write, you would put in a jar or a zip file that would contain all the jars that are in there, specify the class that it would call, and then it would implement this export to web service, and then it'd be passed all that information that we saw inside of the plugin, so you can create your own. Easy as that. The other thing that I did was we also configured this custom export, and which was exactly what I just showed you. So we mapped this invoice type to this schema that I created on the right-hand side. And if we look there, we can see that we just got this same batch and that it has the information around this batch instance, that it's an invoice, and here's the date that it extracted from it. So that's what I have on export, and actually that's what I focused in on today. So are there any questions that have to deal with today's content or not? So I'm not sure where, I've got a question. Do you have access to the HOCR, which is essentially the OCR file for every single page? There. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Are you talking about the custom export or the web services? Well, in either case, what it hands you is that batch instance information. So you can go and find inside of the path each HOCR file. Well, you can find the batch XML, and then you can find each HOCR file that is pointed out inside of that batch instance. Does that answer your question? And are there other questions? Kind of. Well, let me go ahead and take it offline. Shoot me your question. We can walk it over together. Any other questions? Well, cool beans. That is the end of today's session. And so in the interim, thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up. And please submit more questions. Let me know what you want to talk to. This one was mostly based on something that I wanted to show you that was just lesser known. And I kind of extrapolated that into a true session on export capabilities. So if you want something like that, or just something laser focused on a particular piece of Ephesoft Transact, or another application, or a general capture type of questions, please let me know, and we will get to it next week. Thank you very much.